You think quick meals are a modern invention? Think again. African American kitchens mastered 10-minute cooking long before fast food existed. These rapid recipes fed families rushing to work, school, and church without sacrificing flavor or tradition. Here are 60 lost 10-minute recipes not found in cookbooks anymore. Pancakes. Since we are visiting the all-time classics which last even today in almost every child's diet and life, it would be a crime to go without mentioning Grandma's beloved fluffy pancakes. Did you ever wonder what made hers so much fluffier? Pancake houses across the nation seemingly met their match when confronted with a 60-something-year-old grandmother who loves to spend time obsessing over her grandkids. So what is it that home chefs discovered that several brands and franchises could not? There are a few tricks they would use, like letting the egg whites relax in the batter before cooking them, or having impeccable flipping skills so just the right amount of heat gets to each side. Some would just whisk and beat their eggs and batter so well that you got one supremely thick stack of pancakes. It seems the secret was simply the years of pancake-making experience that are hard to replicate. Cinnamon bites were the retro appetizer that required no oven and delivered maximum flavor in a single bite. Just cube up some cooked ham, canned or leftover, drain a can of pineapple chunks, and skewer one of each on a toothpick. Serve cold or room temperature. That was all it took. The sweet tang of the pineapple cut through the saltiness of the ham, and the toothpick made it feel like something special, even if it took under 10 minutes to make. These bites were everywhere from church luncheons to cocktail parties in the 1960s and 1970s. If you saw a tray of them, you knew they would be the first to disappear. They were clean, easy to prep, and perfect for feeding a crowd on short notice. Some versions added a sprinkle of paprika or a glaze, but the basic duo of fruit and meat stood on its own. Simple, sharp, and always satisfying. Molasses rice with leftover meat transformed scraps and day-old rice into a fragrant dinner in less than 15 minutes. Cold-cooked rice was the key, each grain separating as it hit the hot oil of a wide skillet or wok. Bits of carrot, peas, and diced onions followed, their colors brightening as they sizzled. Leftover meat, whether pork chops, chicken, or beef, was sliced thin and tossed in with a splash of soy sauce and a drizzle of sesame oil. A quick scramble of eggs in the corner of the pan finished the dish, binding everything together with soft ribbons. The result was smoky and savory, carrying the scent of garlic and ginger through the house. Families appreciated how it cleared the refrigerator of odds and ends while creating a meal that tasted planned and special. Served hot straight from the pan, it proved that yesterday's rice and scraps of meat could become a satisfying dinner that rivaled takeout, saving both time and money without sacrificing flavor or comfort. Texas chili dog plate made a hearty, messy dinner that satisfied a spiced drink that appeared frequently in cookbooks of the 1930s and 1940s as both an appetizer and a health tonic. The recipe was quick. Tomato juice poured over ice and seasoned with Worcestershire sauce, lemon juice, and sometimes celery salt or a dash of pepper. Served in glasses before a meal, it was seen as refreshing, inexpensive, and surprisingly sophisticated. Housewives could prepare it in minutes, and it gave even a simple supper the feeling of a restaurant course. At a time when vitamins and nutrition were highly promoted, tomato juice cocktails also gained a reputation as a healthy option. Families liked its tangy flavor, and it was sometimes offered to guests in place of alcoholic drinks during Prohibition and the years that followed. This recipe showed how easily a humble canned product could be elevated with a few dashes of seasoning. It was a thrifty, stylish way to make ordinary meals feel more special. Cabbage on toast was one of Grandma's best fancy in 5 minutes tricks. She would take a thin cut of pork, season it with salt and pepper, and pan-fry it in butter until golden brown and just cooked through. Meanwhile, she would warm up canned or stewed apples, sometimes spiced with cinnamon or cloves. A thick slice of toast would go down on the plate first, then the pork chop, and finally a generous spoonful of those sweet, soft apples on top. It looked like something you would get in a country diner, but it took less than 10 minutes in her kitchen. The toast soaked up the juices. The pork brought the savory. The apples added just enough sweetness to make it feel special. No one called it gourmet, but no one left a bite behind either. It was a clever mix of pantry staples and leftover odds and ends, dressed up just enough to make you sit a little straighter at the table. And it reminded you. Even a 10-minute dinner could feel like something worth slowing down for. Imagine you're at a snack bar, surrounded by croutons and peri-peri bites, but no garlic bread bites. You try something else in order to fill the craving, but nothing really seems to be doing the trick. Whatever is on deck is just not that tasty, and you seem to be recalling memories from days past. Your grandma would make more garlic bread bites than was probably healthy for children, but who could stop her from making everyone's day? The bites were so delicious and had the perfect amount of crunch, but also great potential for munching as you watched a movie or a show. That still holds up exactly the same today, so people often get to making them because they are so easy and take barely 10 minutes. Watch out, because this just might take popcorn out of your rotation if you have not experienced its magic before. Trying over cornbread squares was the ultimate no-waste comfort food that came together with a single microwave beep. The chili was yesterday's, cold, thick, and waiting in a bowl in the fridge. The cornbread came from a box mix, usually baked the night before and cut into squares, often still wrapped in foil. When hunger struck, all you had to do was stack, heat, and eat. The warmth of the chili soaked into the crumbly sweetness of the cornbread, making every bite feel like a reunion of flavors. You could top it with shredded cheese or a splash of hot sauce if you had time, but honestly, you did not need to. This was fast food in its homiest form, nothing fancy, nothing wasted. In the 1970s and 1980s, it was a common sight on dinner tables across the South and Midwest, where boxed cornbread and canned chili were pantry staples. It made use of leftovers without making them feel like repeats. 10 minutes, 1 plate, 0 guilt. Just heat, spoon, and dig in. Cream cheese and celery boat. Po' boy brought a taste of the Gulf Coast to busy kitchens using only what sat in the freezer. Packaged fish sticks baked or pan-fried until their coating turned golden and crunchy, while soft sandwich rolls warmed in the oven. Tartar sauce was stirred together with chopped pickles, a squeeze of lemon, and a little mustard, filling the kitchen with a tangy scent. Shredded lettuce and thin tomato slices waited on the counter, ready to add freshness and color. As soon as the fish sticks finished, they were stacked inside the rolls, drizzled with the cool sauce, and topped with the crisp vegetables. The contrast of hot, flaky fish and chilled toppings tasted like a seaside lunch, even on a weeknight far from the water. In less than 15 minutes, a handful of inexpensive ingredients became a meal that felt special, making families forget how quickly it came together. Every crunchy bite delivered the carefree feeling of a coastal vacation without leaving the house, a reminder that a freezer staple can still capture the spirit of a faraway kitchen when imagination and hunger meet. Beef and salad was one of those fast dishes that found its way into nearly every old cookbook because it required so little effort and always tasted refreshing. Thin slices of cucumber were tossed in a dressing made from sour cream, sugar, and a splash of vinegar or lemon juice to give it balance. The sweet and tangy mixture clung to the crisp cucumber slices, making the salad both cooling and creamy. In summer months, it was often served straight from the icebox, which gave it even more appeal. Housewives appreciated how quickly it came together, often in less than 10 minutes, and how it could stretch a garden's worth of cucumbers into a dish that seemed more substantial. Families liked it as a side with roast meats or sandwiches, and it often appeared at picnics or potlucks because it traveled well in jars. The salad's popularity came from its thrift as much as its taste, since cucumbers were cheap and sour cream was often at hand. It was simple, satisfying, and a little bit special without being complicated. Vienna sausages was not just a baked bean and hot dog dinner. This was the working family's answer to hunger, chaos, and a kitchen clock that never slowed down. Grandma would take a can of baked beans, thick, sweet, and molasses dark, and heat it slowly on the stove. Then came the franks, sliced into coins and tossed in until they plumped up like little balloons. Sometimes she would add a spoonful of brown sugar or a shake of mustard, but most nights she just stirred and served. It was hot, sticky, smoky, and completely effortless. The beans coated the franks like syrup over pancakes, and it went best with a buttered slice of toast or a side of cornbread if the oven was already warm. Kids would gobble it down in minutes. Grown-ups would sigh, eat quietly, and go back for seconds. It was the kind of stovetop magic that made do with what you had and somehow made it taste better than it should. You never forgot the smell. And even if you rolled your eyes when she made it, you would ask for it again once life got harder and you needed something easy. That is what made it a keeper. Cold dinner and apple butter toast sounds like something out of a fancy cafe, but it was actually a humble 10-minute snack from old farm kitchens. You took a slice of white or wheat bread, spread on a layer of sweet, spiced apple butter, then laid a slice of cheddar cheese on top. Pop it under the broiler or in a toaster oven just long enough to warm it through and melt the edges of the cheese. The result? A gooey, sharp, sweet snack that made no sense on paper but all the sense in your mouth. It was especially popular in the autumn, when apple butter was fresh and cheddar was always in the fridge. Farmers and school kids alike loved it for how fast it came together and how deeply comforting it felt. It had the tang of cheese, the warmth of apples, and the soft crunch of toast. And while it rarely showed up on restaurant menus, it became a beloved secret in home kitchens across the 1940s and 1950s. A bite of this is like a time capsule of cozy flavor. Cold macaroni and potato. Hash turned scraps into a filling supper that could be on the table before the day's stories were finished. Leftover boiled potatoes were diced and tossed into a hot skillet with a bit of butter until their edges crisped to a golden brown. Eggs were cracked directly over the sizzling potatoes, their yolks breaking to coat each bite in a rich sauce as they cooked. A sprinkle of salt, pepper, and maybe a dash of paprika was all it needed. The aroma of frying potatoes and eggs promised satisfaction and thrift, a meal built from yesterday's extras and today's needs. Served straight from the pan, the hash invited everyone to eat family style, forks clinking as the steam rose. It proved that speed never had to sacrifice comfort and that the best dinners often came from making the most of what was already on hand. Cabbage and sausage fry-up offered big flick apple pie with crackers was one of the most clever Depression-era tricks to ever appear in print. When apples were scarce or expensive, cooks would take soda crackers, sugar, water, cinnamon, and lemon juice to recreate the flavor and texture of apple filling. The crackers softened in the syrupy mixture and remarkably resembled tender apple slices once baked. Covered with a simple pie crust, the result looked and tasted enough like real apple pie that many guests never suspected the difference. Best of all, it could be made in about 10 minutes of active work, since the filling came together on the stovetop in no time. Cookbooks praised it as a marvel of resourcefulness, and it became a household favorite during times when true fruit pies were out of reach. Few recipes show the ingenuity of old cookbooks better than this one. Jell-O whip salad. Sloppy Joes had already earned their place in the American kitchen by the time Grandma figured out how to make them faster. Instead of hamburger buns, she grabbed slices of toast, whatever white sandwich bread was left in the bread box. Ground beef got tossed into the skillet with a little onion, then drowned in a quick mix of ketchup, mustard, and a pinch of sugar if you had it. No special seasonings, no packets, no fuss. Once the mixture was bubbling, it got spooned right over the toast and served just like that, open-faced, hot, and ready to fall apart in your hands. That was half the fun. It dripped, it stained your fingers, and it always tasted better the messier it was. This was a dinner for families who were too tired to sit proper but still wanted to eat together. It was loud, quick, and honest. And even though it came from a time of tight belts and short patience, it tasted like something you might pay good money for at a diner today. That is the thing about Sloppy Joe toast. It always fed more than just your stomach. Bologna and noodles are a dish so strongly associated with the elderly that they even have another name. Introducing Grandma's noodles, which were a staple of any family gathering back when simple dishes like this were still enough to leave a great impression on everyone at the table. The eggs made you feel great because they added a very warm feeling to the dish as well as being great for you. The butter itself was just the right touch that the dish needed and brought out the chewy sensation of the noodles so much more, and the overall flavor was something a mix between creamy chicken noodles and chicken cooked in butter, shredded and diced with vegetables. It screamed love in every sense of the word because it was a dish that took effort and, more than anything else, a lot of attention to detail to nail. But if that's the job, then there's no one better for it than the grandmas of the country. Sandwiches were the working-class breakfast that moved fast and stuck with you all morning. You cracked a couple of eggs into a hot pan, scrambled them quickly with a pinch of salt, and piled them between 2 slices of soft white bread. Then came the key ingredient, a generous squirt of ketchup. The bread soaked up the heat, the eggs stayed fluffy, and the ketchup added a bright, tangy kick that cut through the richness. No one used measuring spoons. This was instinct cooking, done while tying your shoes or pouring coffee. It became popular in the 1950s and 1960s when speed mattered more than elegance, and has stuck around in diner menus and lunchboxes ever since. Some added cheese or bacon, but most kept it plain. It was warm, familiar, and took less than 10 minutes to put together and eat. A handheld breakfast that got the job done. Cheddar and broccoli omelet made a hearty egg dinner with bright color and bold flavor in minutes. Eggs were whisked with a splash of milk and a pinch of black pepper, then poured into a hot skillet where butter foamed at the edges. Fresh or frozen broccoli florets steamed quickly in the microwave or in a small pan, keeping their green snap and gentle sweetness. As the eggs began to set, sharp cheddar cheese was scattered across the surface, releasing a nutty scent as it melted. The broccoli folded inside added texture and an earthy contrast to the creamy eggs. In less than 10 minutes, the omelet slid onto a plate, golden on the outside and gooey within. Served with toasted bread or a handful of greens, it offered both comfort and nourishment, proving that dinner can be simple, yet feel complete. This dish turned basic staples into a meal that pleased everyone at the table while leaving only one pan to wash, making it ideal for nights when time and patience were in short supply, but good food was still essential. Chicken egg salad were a favorite recipe in old cookbooks that balanced elegance with practicality. The idea was simple. Hollow out fresh tomatoes and fill them with a cold salad made from canned tuna or chopped hard-boiled eggs mixed with mayonnaise. This made a dish that was colorful, refreshing, and ready in minutes, with no cooking required. It was especially popular in the summer when gardens overflowed with ripe tomatoes and families wanted something cool and light. Homemakers liked that it turned basic pantry staples into a meal that looked fancy enough for luncheons or church gatherings. Children often found it fun to eat since each tomato became its own little bowl. The recipe was also thrifty, making a small amount of tuna or egg stretch further when combined with the juicy tomato. Served on a bed of lettuce or alongside crackers, it quickly became a reliable standby. It showed how creativity could make everyday ingredients into something memorable. Stuffed tomatoes offered color, flavor, and nourishment, all wrapped into a neat and tidy package. Quick rice and raisin cereal cabbage was the kind of meal that did not sound like much but got the job done, and then some. Grandma would slice the Spam into thick chunks and toss it into a hot pan until the edges crisped and curled. Then came the shredded cabbage, sizzling as it hit the fat, softening in the salt, and soaking up every bit of flavor. A splash of vinegar or a pinch of sugar if she felt like balancing things out. That was it. No special tools, no hard steps. But the kitchen always smelled like something better than it should have. The cabbage turned silky. The Spam, golden and caramelized. You could eat it on its own or pile it over mashed potatoes or rice if you had extra. For many, it was a depression holdover. For others, it was just what you made when payday was still a few days away. It was salty, hearty, and fast. The holy trinity of Grandma's weekday dinners. And for all the jokes people made about Spam, no one left hungry. You might laugh at the idea now, but back then, this was dinner you could trust. Speaking of adding butter to the mix and elevating the dish, cheese has a pretty similar effect when you mix it with some scrambled eggs. It was one of the dreamiest breakfasts you could wake up to. The scent of freshly scrambled eggs forming a clear road that guided you to the kitchen, with each step taken increasing that early morning appetite. Once you sit, you are blessed with the glorious glow of cheese mixed with shining yolk and brilliant egg whites, scrambled to complete perfection mixed in with Grandma's special seasonings. That usually just meant a dash of paprika and oregano here and there. What was truly special, though, is how Grandma would manage to melt the cheese into the egg without compromising on how scrambled it was, which is an art lost to them now. These were the snack that let kids feel like chefs and parents breathe easy. All you needed were Ritz crackers, a spoonful of tomato sauce, and a sprinkle of shredded cheese. You laid the crackers out on a tray, added a dab of sauce to each, topped with cheese, and placed them under the broiler or in the toaster oven until bubbly. The result was a tiny, crunchy, cheesy bite of satisfaction. No dough to roll, no oven to preheat, and no mess to clean up. Kids made them for sleepovers. Parents used them as quick appetizers, and everyone agreed they were better than they had any right to be. Some folks added pepperoni slices or olives, but the basic 3-ingredient version stayed a favorite. It was a fast way to scratch that pizza itch without waiting for delivery or dealing with leftovers. In 10 minutes or less, you had a full plate of bite-sized comfort food and a happy, quiet kitchen. Canned refried bean and cheese nights when there was barely time to sit, let alone cook. Ground beef hit the hot skillet first, sizzling as it browned while the cook stirred in chopped onions and a quick sauce of tomato paste, vinegar, brown sugar, and a shake of paprika. Within minutes, the mixture thickened into a rich, saucy filling that perfumed the kitchen with a scent both savory and slightly sweet. Soft sandwich rolls were split and warmed while the beef bubbled, ready to soak up every drop. The sloppy name came alive the moment the mixture met the bread, spilling deliciously over the sides and begging for napkins. Families loved how it stretched a small amount of meat across several sandwiches, and children delighted in the messy fun of every bite. Fast, filling, and friendly to any budget, the Sloppy Joe skillet earned its place as a dependable working man's dinner that felt like a small party at the table. Ham and sour cream salad might sound unusual today, but in the middle of the 20th century, it was a prized quick dish that often doubled as dessert. Cookbooks called for nothing more than slicing ripe bananas, layering them neatly on a plate, covering them with sour cream, and sprinkling the top with a dusting of sugar. In less than 10 minutes, you had a salad that was creamy, tangy, and sweet all at once. Housewives appreciated how it used just 3 ingredients, yet looked elegant enough for luncheons or church gatherings. Children enjoyed the sweetness, while adults saw it as a lighter alternative to heavier pies or cakes. What made it endure was how easy it was to scale. A single banana could serve one person, or several could fill a platter. It was also one of those recipes that made use of fruit before it spoiled, which was essential in thrifty kitchens. Ham and pickle relish. This one came straight out of the open the pantry and hope for a miracle school of cooking. Scrambled eggs with canned chili was never in any cookbook, but it made it onto plates across America faster than most 5-ingredient dinners. Grandma would beat a few eggs with whatever milk she had left, toss them in a skillet, and stir them just until they were barely set. Then came the chili, straight from the can, full of beans and spice and a little bit of mystery meat. It would warm right on top of the eggs until the kitchen smelled like a diner on a slow afternoon. A few slices of toast on the side, maybe a wedge of cheese if you were lucky, and you had yourself a meal. It was hearty, messy, and completely satisfying. No one asked what brand the chili was or whether the eggs were farm fresh. What mattered was that it was hot, filling, and on the table in 10 minutes. It was meals like this that made it possible to get through the rest of the week. And once you have eaten it once, you will understand why it never needed a recipe. A dish that you may not see coming or be prepared for, but it actually works really well this way too. We are talking about peanut butter jelly and banana toast, which is exactly what it sounds like. You take some toast, preferably toast until it's crunchy, then lather it with as much peanut butter and jelly as you desire, and layer it with sliced bananas. You may have only heard of that combo as a part of some protein shake or smoothie, but it works just as well sitting on top of bread as it does in a glass. This is also a perfectly refreshing option for when you are low on work, and grandmas obviously kept that in mind. When they could just tell that somebody in the household needed a sugar rush and a kick from behind to get them into high gear, they would feed them a lot more toast than was probably wise, but it would work every time. Egg salad sandwiches might sound strange to modern ears, but back in the day, this sweet and tangy sandwich was a Southern staple that showed up in plenty of lunchboxes. You mashed up a ripe banana, spread it on soft sandwich bread, and added a swipe of mayonnaise. That was it. It was quick, cheap, and surprisingly filling. Families leaned on recipes like this when groceries were scarce and meals had to stretch. The banana added sweetness, the mayo gave it creaminess, and together they turned plain bread into a fast, satisfying lunch. You would find this sandwich scribbled in old community cookbooks, passed down at church picnics, or tucked into handwritten recipe boxes that lived in kitchen drawers. It might be forgotten now, but for plenty of folks growing up during hard times, this odd little sandwich was a reliable 10-minute fix when money was tight and hunger was knocking. Quick skillet tamale pie was the shortcut lunch that onion sandwich spread proved that deli leftovers could turn into a hearty supper in almost no time. Thin slices of roast beef, whether from a weekend dinner or the grocery counter, were chopped fine and folded into a bowl of mayonnaise and diced onions. A splash of Worcestershire sauce and a pinch of black pepper added depth, while the onions provided crunch and a sharp bite. The mixture chilled for just a few minutes while bread toasted and plates were set. Then it was piled thick between slices of rye or soft white sandwich bread. Some families liked a layer of crisp lettuce for freshness, while others spooned the spread onto crackers for an easy snack that still felt like a meal. It stretched a small amount of beef into several servings, saving both time and money while still tasting indulgent. Each bite combined creamy texture with savory meat and a gentle onion heat, the kind of simple pleasure that keeps everyone coming back for seconds. Quick to make, rich to eat, this spread turned odds and ends into a dinner worth remembering, proving that thrift and flavor can happily share the same table. Country ham and red-eye gravy brought a bold, salt. Griddle cakes were born from the idea that nothing should go to waste, not even the cold pot of oatmeal left from breakfast. Cookbooks encouraged thrifty cooks to stir in a little flour, baking powder, and milk to form a thick batter that could be spooned onto a hot griddle. Within minutes, you had hearty cakes with a crisp outside and a tender inside. The beauty of this recipe was that it disguised leftovers as something entirely new. Families often topped them with syrup, molasses, or a pat of butter, and suddenly yesterday's porridge became today's satisfying lunch. These cakes were not only quick, but also surprisingly filling, which made them especially appealing during leaner times. For housewives looking to stretch every penny, turning scraps into something warm and comforting was not just resourceful, it was rewarding. This recipe captured that spirit perfectly. Grapefruit halves with brown sugar. Quick tomato and rice soup was less of a recipe and more of a family habit. It started with canned tomato soup, the kind that came in a red and white can and waited patiently in your pantry for its moment. Instead of milk or water, Grandma would stir in leftover rice from the night before, just a scoop or two, enough to bulk it up and stretch it across the whole table. The rice gave it body, the soup gave it flavor, and together they made something more than the sum of their parts. It simmered on the stove while she folded laundry or paid bills at the kitchen table. It was the smell that told you dinner was ready, not the clock. No one complained that it was simple. In fact, that was the point. You could top it with cheese, swirl in a bit of cream, or eat it plain with saltines on the side. Whatever the case, it went down smooth, warmed you up fast, and made a long day feel less heavy. It might not win any ribbons, but it won over every empty stomach it ever met. There really is nothing like a grilled cheese sandwich, a meal that you have seen in the media, in kitchens, all over neighborhoods, in stalls and diners, and just about everywhere else. Sometimes you are in too much of a rush to make anything proper, or you just might only have some cheese and bread on hand. Everyone still needs to eat, but does that mean we have to wash down something we do not even like the taste of? No, and the popularity of grilled cheese sandwiches is a testament to that. But how did these sandwiches get so popular? Well, most Americans can only remember them as a loving meal that their grandmother would make in times exactly like what we described. The best part is that regardless of what kind of bread or cheese you like, every combo works just as well, which is something we cannot say about many dishes. So here is a hot dog and baked bean skillet dinners were born from the marriage of convenience and childhood cravings. They required almost no prep. Just slice up a few hot dogs, toss them in a hot pan, and once they started to brown and curl at the edges, pour in a can of baked beans. That was it. You stirred it around until everything was bubbling, then served it straight from the pan. It was fast, filling, and full of flavor, especially when the bean sauce soaked into the crisped edges of the hot dogs. In the 1960s and 1970s, this was a common weeknight rescue meal. No chopping, no measuring, and no need for side dishes unless you wanted toast or coleslaw on the plate. Kids loved it. Adults tolerated it. But everyone appreciated how little cleanup it took. You could add mustard or brown sugar if you were feeling fancy, or just leave it plain and let the sweet-savory combo do its work. It was the ultimate 10-minute hot meal when your brain was fried and your fridge was nearly empty. Melt on rye delivered diner flavor in a fraction of the time, making it a favorite among families who craved something special after a long shift. Ground beef was quickly shaped into thin patties and pressed flat on a hot griddle until sizzling and browned. Meanwhile, onions sliced paper-thin softened in butter until golden and sweet, their aroma drifting through the kitchen. Slices of rye bread were spread with more butter, then layered with the beef, the onions, and generous slices of melty Swiss or American cheese. A few minutes back on the skillet brought everything together, the bread crisping as the cheese oozed around the edges. The result was a sandwich that tasted like a full diner meal, yet came together faster than any takeout order. Served with pickles or a handful of chips, the patty melt satisfied both hunger and the need for something comforting, proving that a fast dinner could still feel like a small luxury at the end of a demanding day. Cornbread and pinto beans bowl turned cheese plate was a dish that reflected both thrift and the diet trends of the mid-20th century. Cookbooks often included it in sections on light suppers or summer meals because it was inexpensive, quick, and required no cooking at all. The recipe was straightforward: thick slices of ripe tomato arranged neatly on a plate and topped with a scoop of cottage cheese, sometimes sprinkled with pepper or paprika for color. It looked wholesome, tasted refreshing, and was considered fashionable during years when calorie-conscious meals were gaining attention. Families who grew tomatoes in their gardens could put together the dish in under 10 minutes, making it both practical and nutritious. Cottage cheese was prized for its protein, and when paired with tomatoes, it made a plate that satisfied without feeling heavy. Though simple, it often appeared at luncheons and gatherings because its bright colors gave it visual appeal. It was the kind of dish that proved old cookbooks valued simplicity just as much as ingenuity. Quick, great cornbread and buttermilk in a bowl might not sound like much, but it was a whole supper to folks who knew how to stretch a dollar. Grandma would crumble leftover cornbread into a dish, pour cold buttermilk right on top, and hand it over with a spoon. That was it. No cooking, no warming up. Just cold, tangy, crumbly simplicity. It was a Southern staple that made its way into kitchens all across America, especially during hot months or tight times. Some people added salt. Others stirred in a little honey. But most just ate it as it was, a strange but surprisingly filling meal that stuck with you. The cornbread soaked up the buttermilk, softening into something almost like a pudding. It was not meant to impress, just to nourish, and for a lot of families, it was all they needed at the end of a long day. It was cheap, it was easy, and most importantly, it got the job done. That is the kind of dinner that deserved a place in every old cookbook. The next dish comes with a bit of a history lesson that goes way further back than the time of our grandparents. Ham and cheese quesadillas may have been what they were binge-eating daily and serving up to us, but where did quesadillas ever come from? Apparently, they were not an American invention, and nobody could really find a solid name that they could credit with making the idea up first, until people did some history digging and found out that. Spanish settlers that tried their hand at taking over Central America in the very early days of the land brought Mexican culture with them. The rest, as they say, is history, and the people of the USA took to quesadillas very well. Especially easy variants like the ham and cheese one, which meant that you almost always had a snack that hit the taste buds just right and made you full too. The best part about quesadillas is that they are so quick to prepare and easy to make that you can enter Flavortown in just 10-15 minutes, which is a pretty good sell for anybody. Convenient food is always the best after all. Kitchen's speedy rice pilaf stands as a testament to how resourcefulness can satisfy palates in minutes. Historically, pilaf traces back centuries to Middle Eastern and Central Asian cuisines, though it found renewed popularity across the United States as packaged convenience foods gained momentum in the 20th century. Some comedic observers say it's a dish that never retires, showcasing staying power in households across the country. At its core, this recipe relies on briefly sautéing onions in a dash of oil, then combining quick-cooking rice with flavorful spices, ensuring a well-rounded taste without prolonged stovetop watch. The resulting texture is fluffy yet distinct, offering a balance of softness and gentle bite that appeals to all ages. Nostalgia emerges when recalling mid-century TV commercials that championed instant rice, promising a perfect side dish ready faster than a station break. Today, home cooks still appreciate its no-fuss approach, which requires only basic ingredients and minimal monitoring. The convenience resonates with those juggling busy schedules, who often joke that any dish requiring more than 10 minutes conflicts with precious downtime. Breakfast for dinner, pancake stack with bacon turned a morning favorite into a fun and filling evening meal. Flour, milk, eggs, and a little baking powder whisked together quickly to form a smooth batter that poured onto a sizzling griddle, sending up a sweet, buttery aroma. Each pancake bubbled and browned in just minutes, ready to stack high while crisp bacon strips cooked in a nearby skillet. The smoky scent of bacon mingled with the warm fragrance of fresh pancakes, creating a kitchen atmosphere both cozy and exciting. Butter melted between layers, while a slow drizzle of warm maple syrup cascaded over the stack, soaking each fluffy round. The salty bacon provided the perfect counterpoint to the soft, sweet pancakes, making every bite a blend of textures and tastes. Families loved the playful switch of serving breakfast at the end of the day, and cleanup was minimal, leaving more time to relax. In less than 20 minutes, this meal offered pure comfort and a gentle reminder that the best dinners are sometimes the ones that break the rules in the most delicious way possible. Ranchera egg custard cups made on the stovetop were one of those clever recipes that made dessert possible even without an oven. Cookbooks instructed homemakers to whisk together eggs, milk, sugar, and a splash of vanilla, then pour the mixture into small cups and set them in a double boiler to steam. In less than 15 minutes, the custards firmed into silky, sweet servings that could be enjoyed warm or chilled. This recipe was especially practical in summer when turning on the oven was unpleasant. Families loved the smooth, creamy texture, and the portion-sized cups made it easy to serve at gatherings or for children. Sometimes nutmeg was sprinkled on top for flavor and decoration. Egg custard cups embodied the thrift and resourcefulness of vintage kitchens, using simple ingredients to create a dish that felt indulgent without requiring extra cost. They were proof that even the humblest pantry could produce something elegant. In homes that valued both speed and tradition, custard cups were always welcome. Cinnamon toast. The cheddar and tomato open-faced broil was the kind of dinner that always looked better than it had any right to. Grandma would take thick slices of sandwich bread, lay down a few rounds of fresh or canned tomato, and top it all with slabs of cheddar cheese. Then into the broiler it went, just long enough for the cheese to melt and bubble, with the edges crisping up like a grilled sandwich turned inside out. It was salty, juicy, and exactly what you needed when the pantry felt a little too empty. Some people added a shake of black pepper. Others spooned on a little mayonnaise before the cheese went on. It was flexible, forgiving, and always fast. You did not need a recipe, just a sense of timing and a hot oven. It fed kids after school. It filled up adults after work, and it made the house smell like someone was trying, even if it was just the toaster oven doing most of the work. That was Grandma's magic. She made 10-minute meals feel like home. Rice with butter and The mayonnaise and banana sandwich is the kind of recipe that sounds like a dare, but was once a very real part of many American lunches. During the 1970s, this sweet and creamy pairing showed up in school lunchboxes, kitchen counters, and budget cookbooks alike. You took 2 slices of white bread, spread each with a generous layer of mayonnaise, and placed sliced bananas in between. The result was soft, tangy, sweet, and absolutely polarizing. Some kids loved it, others traded it away. But it was quick, cheap, and surprisingly rich in calories, making it a go-to for households trying to fill stomachs without emptying wallets. Some families added a shake of cinnamon, a drizzle of honey, or even crushed peanuts to give it extra flair. But the classic version kept it simple and strange. Today, it is more of a nostalgic curiosity than a mainstream snack, but anyone who grew up with it remembers the creamy texture, the faint zing of mayo, and the shock of how oddly well it worked. If you were in a rush, out of lunch meat, or just adventurous enough, this sandwich was waiting in the wings. Sardines and mustard on steak tips with garlic butter turned small pieces of beef into a dinner that tasted far more luxurious than the clock allowed. Bite-sized cubes of steak were seasoned with salt and pepper, then seared quickly in a smoking hot skillet until browned on the outside and just tender within. As the meat rested for a moment, butter melted in the pan with minced garlic and a handful of fresh parsley, creating a sauce that smelled like a steakhouse. The sizzling butter was poured back over the meat, coating every piece in rich, garlicky flavor. Served over toast, rice, or even plain with a side of vegetables, the dish offered restaurant-style indulgence in the time it took to set the table. Families loved how a modest amount of beef could feel like a feast, and the sound of butter hitting the hot pan became a signal that the day's work was over and something delicious was ready. Creamed salad was a sweet and savory cold dish that combined juicy, fresh grapes with cubes of sharp cheddar cheese and a touch of mayonnaise for added creaminess. This salad was a common favorite at family gatherings, potlucks, and holiday meals throughout the 1960s, appreciated for its unique blend of contrasting flavors and simple, quick assembly. The natural sweetness of the grapes perfectly balanced the tangy, robust flavor of the cheddar cheese, while the mayonnaise provided a smooth texture that brought all the elements together. Often served chilled on a bed of crisp lettuce or alongside other cold dishes, this recipe exemplified the era's fondness for pairing sweet fruits with savory ingredients in cold salads and appetizers. While it may seem unusual to modern tastes, grape and cheese salad remains a nostalgic symbol of inventive and approachable mid-century American cooking. It highlights the creativity and resourcefulness of home cooks who sought to create tasty dishes that were both convenient and visually appealing, capturing the comforting spirit of quick recipes from the 1960s. Cheddar soy sauce was one of those dinners that made the most out of almost nothing. After the war, a lot of homes had rice in the pantry and not much else. Grandma would boil a pot, fluff it with a fork, and then stir in a generous pat of butter and just enough soy sauce to give it color and salt. It was not traditional, it was not fancy, but it did the job. The butter gave it richness, the soy sauce gave it depth, and together they turned a plain grain into something worth sitting down for. You could eat it on its own or serve it beside scrambled eggs, canned vegetables, or the last spoonful of meat from the night before. It was a filler, yes, but a warm, flavorful one that somehow tasted better the more you needed it. This dish was quiet comfort, the kind that showed up when no one else did and still managed to make you feel full. And that is why it stayed in rotation, long after things got better. Sometimes the best meals were the ones that asked for the least. Salad was another classic that people would often come home to when visiting their grandparents for Thanksgiving or just on the weekend in general. Egg salad typically consists of mayonnaise, mustard, and green onions, which add both color and crunch to the dish. When you think of a salad, your mind tends to immediately think boring and unimaginative, but egg salads can toss those opinions right out the window with just one bow, especially if your grandma left her recipe laying around in some journal or cookbook she compiled all throughout her life. Egg salad in particular would go very well with rye, and it would work as a sandwich too. Grandmas loved bringing this one along for family picnics. Who could ever resist a aglio e olio soared in popularity thanks to its swift cooking time, making it ideal for busy households yearning for full-bodied flavor. Historians trace its roots to Naples, where garlic, oil, and chili flakes found their way into countless frugal suppers, proving that even minimal ingredients can create culinary magic. Enthusiasts often joke that this one-pot wonder is proof you don't need a full Italian culinary degree to impress guests, though precision in cooking pasta al dente remains key. Simplicity and accessibility shine through as garlic-infused olive oil blankets each strand, introducing a subtle heat that blends beautifully with the starchy richness. Nostalgia lingers because generations have embraced it as an homage to rustic Italian peasant cooking, where fancy sauces take a back seat to wholesome foundations. For those keeping an eye on speed, a 10-minute cook time makes this enticing for weeknight dinners, unexpected guests, or even late-night cravings. Grape jelly meat sub with jarred sauce turned a simple grocery shortcut into a filling dinner that satisfied every craving for Italian flavor without a long simmer. Pre-made meatballs went straight from the freezer into a skillet of bubbling jarred marinara, their aroma mingling with garlic and herbs as they heated through. Crusty sandwich rolls toasted under the broiler until the edges crisped and the centers stayed soft. As soon as the meatballs were hot and coated in rich sauce, they were spooned into the warm rolls and showered with shredded mozzarella that melted instantly. The result was a hearty sandwich with tender meat, tangy tomato, and gooey cheese in every bite, ready in less time than it took to set the table. Families loved how it felt like a deli treat even on a rushed weeknight, while kids enjoyed the messy fun of eating it with both hands. Each sub tasted slow-cooked and special, proof that smart shortcuts can create a dinner worth gathering around, bringing warmth and satisfaction to the end of a long day without draining time, energy, or budget. One pan, one jar, and a handful of rolls delivered comfort that lingered well past the last bite. Salad was a mid-century sensation that turned a box of gelatin into something creamy and light in almost no time at all. Housewives would prepare the gelatin, let it partially set, and then whip it together with chilled evaporated milk until it became fluffy. The result was a pastel-colored salad that could be dressed up with fruit or served plain. It was inexpensive, fun to look at, and quick enough to prepare for any gathering. Many cookbooks encouraged it as a safe dish for potlucks because it could be made ahead and transported easily. For families, it was a treat that required almost no cooking skills, yet looked impressive in a glass bowl. It captured the era's fascination with convenience foods while still managing to feel special. The creamy texture made it different from ordinary gelatin, which is why it remained so popular for decades. Potato pancake. Peanut butter and bacon sounds like a dare today, but to Grandma, it was just Tuesday lunch. This was a sandwich born in the tail end of the Great Depression and carried proudly into the next decade by people who knew how to stretch every ingredient. She would fry up strips of bacon until they crackled, drain them on the same paper towel she used all week, then lay them across a thick spread of peanut butter on white sandwich bread. That was it. No lettuce, no tomato, no fancy mayonnaise. Just salt, fat, protein, and speed. Kids loved the crunch. Grown-ups loved how it filled you up without burning through the grocery budget. And for something so strange-sounding, it just worked. The warmth of the bacon softened the peanut butter slightly, and the two came together like old friends who had nothing in common but always got along. Sometimes she would add a second slice of bread, but often it was open-faced and served cold. It was portable, practical, and surprisingly satisfying. And in homes where time was short and mouths were many, that counted for everything. You might laugh at it now, but one bite would probably bring it all back. Olpa's apple pie is a classic that only grandmothers are aware of or know how to make, despite it being pretty simple. It's something you could make on your own, but you likely wouldn't achieve the same level of finesse. Apple pies like this one are typically filled with plenty of apples, topped with a lattice crust, and smothered in thick, rich applesauce. It would often make for the best Thanksgiving pie you could have, and they would certainly keep making it every time the holiday season came knocking. The mixture of butter sugar on the top as well as the sauce makes it unforgettable if you try it for the first time, and it is addictive enough to keep making you come back for more. This is also a recipe that grandmothers were fond of passing on. Canned salmon and cracker patties were the go-to dinner when time was short, the fridge was bare, and you still wanted something hot and satisfying on the plate. A can of salmon, a beaten egg, and some crushed saltine crackers were all it took to make this humble meal come to life. You mixed everything in a bowl, shaped the patties by hand, and dropped them into a skillet to fry until golden brown. They cooked fast and smelled even better, with the outside crisping up while the inside stayed soft and flavorful. These patties were popular in kitchens from the 1930s through the 1970s, especially when fresh meat was too expensive and tinned fish was a reliable standby. You could dress them up with lemon wedges, mustard, or a dab of relish, but even plain they did the trick. Kids loved them, adults depended on them, and families kept them in rotation for decades. One pan, one bowl, and 10 minutes later, you had dinner. Tomato juice and buttered toast might sound kitchen's answer to rushed mornings when everyone still needed something hot and filling. Quick grits, a little butter, a handful of shredded cheese, and breakfast was done before you even finished your first cup of coffee. It was the kind of meal found in tattered cookbooks, handed down from grandmothers who knew how to stretch a pantry without cutting corners on comfort. These grits were creamy, cheesy, and surprisingly satisfying for something that took less than 10 minutes to whip up. You did not need fancy groceries or a stocked fridge, just the basics. It kept bellies full through school days, work shifts, or long hours in the fields. For a lot of folks, this was breakfast you ate standing up, spoon in hand, on your way out the door. Simple, cheap, and quietly comforting. Grits have stuck around in fancier forms, but this quick, everyday version has slipped through the cracks of modern cooking. Cold beans and onion salad was a no-cook dinner pulled straight. Dinners had a way of sneaking into the rotation, especially during sticky summers or long days when even boiling water felt like a chore. Cottage cheese and canned peach plates were Grandma's way of keeping things simple but still making it look like she tried. She would scoop a big spoonful of cottage cheese onto a plate, nestle a golden peach half beside it, and top the whole thing with a maraschino cherry if she was feeling fancy. Some people used lettuce as a bed. Others just reached for a fork and got to work. It was creamy, sweet, and oddly refreshing, the kind of combination you only appreciate once you grow up and remember it out of nowhere. The peaches added just enough syrupy sunshine, and the cottage cheese made sure you did not go to bed hungry. It was also what she served when she wanted to eat light but still feed the whole house. This was not a dinner that tried to win over picky eaters. It was a dinner that said, "This is what we have, and it will do just fine." And somehow, it did. Not every meal needed heat or noise. Some just needed quiet. Your favorite flag. If you have any appreciation for colorful ones, then you will like caprese salads, which end up having all the colors of Italy's flag. This is an Italian dish that is really popular as a starter as well as a snack that has been passed down through families, after all. People love adding cheese to everything, which is something we are sure you are well aware of by this point living in America. Caprese salads involve sliced mozzarella, fresh basil, and tomatoes, and it is typically arranged beautifully. Well, that is if you get it at a fancy Italian joint, but if you were having this at your grandma's place, then it was a big bowl with a lot more cheese than they put in those kitchens. It really made the salad a lot better too, even if it was not as good for weight control anymore. Caprese salads are something you should try when you get sick of the regular French and Caesar salads. You might just find a new favorite. Cheese sandwiches on white bread were the Southern lunchbox staple that quietly made their way into kitchens across the country. You made up a big batch of pimiento cheese, usually shredded cheddar, mayo, and little diced pimiento peppers, then slapped it between slices of soft sandwich bread. That was lunch, fast and done. If you were lucky, the batch had been chilling in the fridge overnight so the flavors had time to settle. It showed up everywhere, from school cafeterias to Sunday church gatherings, and you did not need fancy ingredients to pull it together. The filling looked bright orange and odd to anyone who had never tried it, but it was creamy, sharp, and surprisingly satisfying. Some folks added extras like sliced pickles or lettuce, But the plain version stuck around because it was quick, cheap, and kept everyone fed when time was tight. Old cookbooks had pages of pimiento cheese variations, but the classic stayed the same. Easy, portable, and just filling enough to get you through the day. Scrambled standard into a full dinner that felt hearty and fresh. Triple layers of toasted bread held slices of roasted turkey, crisp bacon, ripe tomatoes, and crunchy lettuce, each tier spread with a thin layer of mayonnaise for tang. The stack was secured with toothpicks and sliced into neat quarters, revealing colorful layers that looked as good as they tasted. A side of potato chips or a handful of pickles completed the plate, adding crunch and variety. Because it required no cooking beyond a quick toast and bacon fry, the meal came together in minutes, making it ideal for hot evenings or late nights when a stove felt out of the question. Each bite offered a balance of smoky, salty, and fresh flavors that satisfied even the hungriest diner. Families loved how it felt both casual and substantial. A dinner that borrowed the best of a classic lunch while proving that a sandwich can indeed stand proudly as the evening's main event. Macaroni with butter and black pepper offered pures were one of those clever Depression-era recipes that turned inexpensive canned vegetables into something filling and satisfying. Cooks would mash peas with a little flour and egg, season them with salt and pepper, and drop spoonfuls of the mixture into a hot skillet. In minutes, the patties crisped on the outside while staying tender inside, creating a dish that was both thrifty and hearty. Old cookbooks praised pea fritters as an excellent way to serve vegetables in a form that children were more likely to eat. They were versatile too, working as a side dish, a quick lunch, or even a meat substitute when supplies were low. Families often topped them with gravy or a dab of ketchup to add flavor. For households trying to stretch every can in the pantry, pea fritters felt like a small victory. They were quick to prepare, easy to adapt, and proof that even the simplest ingredients could become something memorable with a little imagination. Salmon patties with saltine crumbs were a classic end-of-the-week dinner, the kind of meal you made when the fridge looked sad and the meat was long gone. Canned salmon was a miracle in itself, cheap, shelf-stable, and packed with enough protein to make you feel like you had not missed a step. Grandma would mix it up with crushed saltine crackers, a beaten egg, and maybe a sprinkle of onion or celery if there was any left. She would form them into small patties and fry them in the same pan that had seen 5 meals already. The result? Golden, crispy outsides with soft, savory centers. They had just enough flavor to make you forget they came from a can and not the sea. Served with peas or creamed corn, or just a dollop of mayonnaise on the side, it was the kind of humble meal that never needed applause. It showed up quietly, did its job, and vanished without complaint. But it left everyone full and just a little more hopeful. That is what dinner was supposed to do. Not impressed, not sparkle, just comfort. And that is exactly what these little salmon cakes delivered. Nobody is a stranger to wraps and how they dominate the bread world as one of the best things you could do with dough or pita or whatever wrap you have. Honey mustard chicken wraps are one kind in particular that have been really popular all over America, since a lot of families grew up eating these or bringing them to school. They were one of the most commonly demanded things to eat. Everywhere you would go, there was a craze for honey mustard wraps that was hard to beat out and impossible to escape. McDonald's had their own budget-friendly versions that did amazingly well with the people too, and home chefs soon found ways to even copy that. As a result, these chicken wraps have become a regular part of the average American diet plan. Also, they just work so well since they are pretty quick to eat too and can be made pretty fast as well. If you know what you are doing, 10 minutes is all you need to assemble and have a wrap ready to go. Egg salad on saltines was a low-effort, high-reward meal that sat somewhere between a snack and a light lunch. All you needed were a couple of hard-boiled eggs, some mayonnaise, a pinch of salt, and a sleeve of saltine crackers. Mash the eggs with a fork, stir in the mayo, and spoon that creamy mixture onto crackers one by one. Some versions added chopped celery, mustard, or paprika, but many kept it basic. It was salty, creamy, and just rich enough to satisfy without weighing you down. Families turned to it in the 1940s and 1950s when lunch needed to be quick and frugal, and it stayed in rotation well into the 1980s. If you had eggs in the fridge and crackers in the pantry, you were halfway there. It was common to see this on a paper plate during card games, in lunchboxes wrapped in wax paper, or as part of a light summer meal when no one wanted to cook. Even now, it is one of those simple joys that takes minutes to make but sticks in your memory. The quick bologna Salisbury steak patties with gravy mix offered a hearty plate in minutes, transforming ground beef into something that tasted like a slow Sunday supper. Lean beef was seasoned with onion powder, garlic, and a splash of Worcestershire, then shaped into oval patties and seared in a skillet until crisp on the outside and juicy inside. While the meat browned, a packet of instant brown gravy whisked together with water created a smooth sauce in a separate pan. Once the patties were done, they were nestled into the bubbling gravy for a final simmer that coated them in rich flavor. Served over mashed potatoes or buttered toast, the meal felt far more elaborate than the clock revealed. Working parents loved the speed and the hearty comfort, while children scooped up every drop of gravy with the last crust of bread. It was a dinner that turned a simple pound of beef into something warm, filling, and memorable, the kind of dish that proves convenience and care can live on the same plate. Sloppy Joe skillet brought a sweet tang to busy week. Celery Victor was a dish that proved even a humble vegetable like celery could be dressed up into something special. This recipe called for cooking celery stalks until just tender, then marinating them quickly in a vinaigrette of oil, vinegar, and herbs. Once chilled, the celery was served as a salad, often on lettuce leaves or with slices of hard-boiled egg for garnish. Old cookbooks promoted it as a sophisticated option, despite its modest ingredients, and it was sometimes featured in restaurants before making its way into home kitchens. Families appreciated how quickly it came together and how it made use of a vegetable that was often overlooked. Celery Victor was light, refreshing, and inexpensive, which made it perfect for luncheons, picnics, or summer suppers. It was the kind of recipe that elevated the ordinary with just a few simple steps. Though celery rarely takes center stage, this dish gave it a moment to shine in a thrifty and flavorful way. Applesauce might sound fancy today, but back in the day, it was just something Grandma could throw together before the table was even set. Sliced ham went straight into a hot skillet, sometimes with just a dab of butter or the leftover fat from breakfast. A quick sear on each side was all it needed. Meanwhile, the applesauce, homemade if you had a backyard tree, canned if you were in a hurry, was warming on the back burner. This was dinner you could smell from the front porch. The saltiness of the ham played off the soft, tart sweetness of the apples in a way that felt balanced, simple, and oddly comforting. It was a meal for days when you were tired, when groceries were thin, or when you just needed something that felt familiar. And the best part? No oven. No long wait. Just a skillet, a spoon, and a little heat. Folks might not talk about ham and applesauce as a main course anymore, but for a generation raised on wartime thrift and flavor that did not waste time, this was a weeknight miracle. If you ever needed proof that sweet and salty go hand in hand, here it is. There were two you've been watching and thinking that so far, nothing seems particularly healthy. Like maybe a snack for you looks more like a fruit and nut oatmeal bowl, rather than mac and cheese, bites, or grilled sandwiches. We cannot blame you. Sometimes you need food that keeps the bloat down and keeps you well fed while preferably not tasting bad. A lot of people think of healthy food and immediately think that it has to taste bad, or even if it does not, it will not taste as good as it could. Fruit and nut oatmeal bowls do not work like that because of how versatile they are. Sometimes your grandma would add almonds and diced apples covered in maple syrup, while other times she'd use crushed blueberries. The template lets you do different things with it every day, so this is an easy 10-minute option you can make whenever you need something to freshen you up. American culinary circles, shrimp scampi often conjures images of sophisticated restaurants, yet it can be crafted in a flash at home without fuss. Earning the moniker Speedy, this streamlined version harnesses fresh shrimp, garlic, butter, and lemon to produce a dazzling entree in mere minutes. Historical records indicate that the term scampi originally referred to small lobsters known as langoustines in Italy. But American cooks embraced shrimp for a more accessible twist on the classic approach. Even minimalists find it gratifying. A swift sauté brings out succulent textures while blending buttery richness with citrus tang. Devotees consider it an ideal solution when time is scarce, but flavor must shine. Some playfully note that it keeps dinner guests from scuttling off early, thanks to its irresistible aroma. Indeed, experts praise shrimp as a great source of lean protein, and with modern supply chains, it remains widely available. Because ingredients are straightforward and easy to obtain, this recipe demonstrates that culinary elegance doesn't require intricate steps or hours of work. Served over pasta or alongside crusty bread, the warm, garlicky sauce appeals to both connoisseurs and casual diners. Cottage chop sandwiches gave thin-cut chops a starring role in a dinner that felt hearty yet required little effort. Lightly seasoned pork chops hit a hot skillet and browned in minutes, their edges turning crisp while the meat stayed juicy inside. Soft sandwich buns toasted nearby, ready to cradle the sizzling chops as soon as they were done. Some families added pickles or a smear of mustard for tang, while others kept it simple, letting the rich flavor of the pork shine on its own. The entire meal came together before the evening news finished its first story, a perfect option for nights when work ran late. Each bite balanced the tender meat with the soft bread, creating a combination that was both rustic and satisfying. Affordable and fast, these sandwiches showed that even a modest cut of meat could deliver the comfort of a full supper without hours in the kitchen, keeping hunger at bay and spirits high. Cornmeal. Crusted potatoes was one of those recipes that appeared in nearly every community cookbook because of its low cost and speed. The instructions were straightforward. Open a can of tomatoes, stir them with breadcrumbs, butter, and a pinch of sugar, then bake them just until hot and bubbling. In 10 minutes flat, you had a side dish that stretched canned goods into something hearty and flavorful. Families served it alongside meats or with slices of bread, and it quickly became a way to make canned vegetables feel more like a proper meal. The texture of soft tomatoes and crunchy crumbs gave it appeal, while the butter made it feel more indulgent than it really was. For many households, this was the kind of recipe that bridged the gap between practicality and comfort, proving that even with limited ingredients, flavor could still shine. Things nearly every kitchen had back then: creamed corn and hot dogs. When both of them landed in the same skillet, dinner was practically done. This was the kind of meal Grandma made when time was short and kids were restless. She would slice the hot dogs into little coins and toss them into a buttered pan until they browned just right around the edges. Then came the creamed corn, thick, sweet, and silky from the can. It all got mixed together into a bubbling, golden mess that looked questionable to some but tasted like warm security. You could eat it on its own, spoon it over bread, or mop it up with the last slice of toast from breakfast. Nobody called it gourmet, but everyone called it dinner. It filled your belly, cleaned out the pantry, and gave you one less thing to worry about. And somehow, it was the meal that lingered in memory more than any roast or fancy casserole. Maybe it was the smell. Maybe it was how fast it came together. Or maybe it was just that it tasted better when you were young, hungry, and too impatient to wait for something fancier. American ideas of a stir-fry often come from dishes like bok choy or aromatic heavy stir-fry that really have a lot of different flavors going on. The recipes that most home chefs and stay-at-home wives cook up is not that complicated. These stir-fries often include basic sauces like chili sauce, soy sauce, vegetable oil, and sweet chili sauce, along with standard vegetables such as lettuce, cabbage, onions, and whatever else you prefer. This gets you an easy dish that saves a lot of time and effort while still ticking the rest of your nutritional needs off for the day. It is also a great recipe to bring back from Grandma's arsenal if you feel like you need a strong source of greens in your diet and are not sure where to start. That is the beauty of a lot of these recipes. They may be decades old, but they were made and refined with the idea of lifelong use in mind. Plus, just like fruit bowls, you can mix and match different ideas that help you find your perfect veggie stir-fry. Try many kinds of recipes out since there is a lot to choose from, Not just one family was used to eating these. And marshmallow sandwiches were the sugar rush snack that lit up kitchens all through the 1960s and 1970s. Kids would grab 2 slices of white bread, spread one side with peanut butter, the other with marshmallow fluff or mini marshmallows, and pop the whole thing into the toaster oven. In just a few minutes, the bread turned golden. The peanut butter melted into a warm ooze, and the marshmallows puffed up, bubbling slightly at the edges. What came out was sticky, sweet, and just messy enough to be fun. Some added banana slices, some used chocolate chips, but the classic stayed simple. It was fast, cheap, and required no adult supervision, just a toaster and a sweet tooth. This sandwich became a mainstay for after-school snacks, weekend treats, and those late-night cravings where only warm sugar would do. You could eat it standing over the sink or sitting cross-legged on the living room floor. Either way, it hit the spot. Italian sausage hoagies brought the flavor of a street fair to the dinner table with little more than a skillet and a few minutes. Pre-cooked Italian sausage links browned quickly until their casings crackled and juices sizzled across the pan. Sliced onions and bell peppers joined the heat, softening and caramelizing as they soaked up the seasoned drippings. Hoagie rolls warmed in the oven until lightly crisp on the outside and tender within. When the vegetables turned golden, the sausages nestled into the rolls, draped with the sweet pepper and onion mixture, and a light scatter of shredded provolone if desired. Each bite balanced smoky spice, soft bread, and the gentle sweetness of slow-cooked vegetables. The meal felt festive, yet required almost no effort, making it a favorite for families who wanted bold taste without a long cooking session. Served with a simple green salad or a handful of chips, these hoagies brought the spirit of an Italian street vendor into a busy kitchen, showing that fast food can still be deeply satisfying and full of character when prepared with care and served piping hot. Breakfast was one of those quick dishes that walked the line between supper and snack, making it a favorite in countless households. The mushrooms were sliced thin, sautéed briefly, and folded into a simple white sauce of butter, flour, and milk. When spooned over thick slices of toasted bread, the mixture became creamy, savory, and filling without needing meat. Families leaned on this recipe during lean years, since mushrooms were often foraged or inexpensive when canned. Old cookbooks praised it as both speedy and sophisticated, especially when served with parsley or paprika sprinkled on top for presentation. The texture of creamy sauce soaking into toast gave it a satisfying richness that made it feel more substantial than the ingredients might suggest. Housewives appreciated the balance of thrift and comfort, and children enjoyed the warm, earthy taste of the mushrooms paired with soft bread. It was the kind of recipe that fit neatly into the rhythm of everyday life, quick to make, versatile to serve, and dependable in taste. In kitchens that valued speed and satisfaction, creamed mushrooms on toast was a quiet star. Corn fritters with syrup were a fast, comforting dish that on buttered toast was one of those meals that whispered instead of shouted. It never tried to impress anyone. It was made for quiet nights, empty fridges, and long weeks. Grandma would melt a little butter in a pan, add canned peas, sometimes drained, sometimes not, and stir in milk and a bit of flour or cornstarch to thicken it. Salt, pepper, maybe a dash of sugar if the peas were too sharp. Then she would ladle the warm, creamy mix over thick slices of buttered toast. It was soft, it was mild, it was the edible version of a warm blanket. Nobody bragged about it, and no one ever asked for seconds out loud. But the plate was always clean by the end. It was a meal that held your hand, quietly filled you up, and gave you the strength to keep going. In some homes, it was the only hot food all week, and even if you had fancier ingredients or a longer grocery list, you still came back to this because it made you feel like a kid again. Just peas and bread and time. That was more than enough. Trying out your favorite ramen packet for the 1150th time this year for dinner? We get it. It is a pretty reliable option. Nothing hits that comfort food craving as well as ramen does. But did you know that back in the days of the early 1900s, when it was not so popular, most home chefs would spice up ramen with some basic additions that are so common today that almost everybody uses it as a default now? We are talking about ramen with eggs, which is something that you may be so used to seeing in every TikTok and short reel on Insta these days, but it did not always used to be like that. Home chefs were the ones who started the trend of adding things to your ramen, spicing it up and seeing what works and what does not. We have to thank them because they definitely hit gold with it. Microwave cinnamon apple slices were the cheat code for apple pie cravings without turning on the oven. You grabbed a fresh apple, any kind would do, sliced it thin, placed the slices in a bowl, sprinkled on cinnamon and sugar, maybe added a dab of butter if you had it, and popped the whole thing into the microwave for a minute or two. The result? Soft, warm apple slices swimming in their own syrupy sauce, fragrant enough to make the kitchen smell like a bakery. It was a quick dessert, a cozy snack, or a sweet breakfast side, depending on how you dressed it up. Top it with granola or spoon it over toast, and suddenly you had something that felt homemade and indulgent. In the 1980s, as microwave ovens took over kitchens, this recipe became a go-to for families who wanted fast comfort food without the mess. Kids could make it on their own, and parents could sneak in some fruit without a fuss. No crust, no cleanup, just 10 minutes to warm, spiced bliss. Velveeta quesadillas with hot dogs with onions and peppers brought the flavor of a street cart into the kitchen without the need for a grill. Hot dogs were scored and browned in a cast iron pan, while sliced onions and bell peppers sautéed beside them in a little butter and salt. The vegetables softened and caramelized, releasing a sweetness that mingled with the smoky scent of the searing meat. Split rolls were toasted directly in the same pan to catch every bit of flavor. In less than 10 minutes, the hot dogs were nestled into the warm bread and piled high with the pepper and onion mixture. A quick dinner that felt indulgent and hearty. Families loved the one-pan cleanup and the way the dish fed a group with minimal effort. Each bite carried the taste of summer fairs and city sidewalks, proving that even a humble hot dog can become a meal worth remembering when time is short and hunger is strong. Egg shrimp wiggle was the kind of dish that perfectly captured the spirit of mid-century convenience cooking, and it was as charmingly simple as it sounds. Housewives looking to put something quick and satisfying on the table would open a can of shrimp, another can of peas, and stir both into a quick white sauce made from butter, flour, and milk. Once thickened, the whole mixture would be spooned generously over toast, biscuits, or even rice. What made this dish endure in old cookbooks was not only how inexpensive it was, but how much it looked like a true dinner, when in reality it took barely 10 minutes from start to finish. Children loved the creamy sauce and bright peas, while adults felt like they were eating something elegant thanks to the shrimp. The name itself added a little bit of fun, which made this meal a small morale booster in an otherwise frugal kitchen. Macaroni and egg scramble was one of those late-night meals that turned into a weeknight tradition. It started when there was leftover macaroni in the fridge, plain, boiled, and sitting cold in a bowl. Grandma would crack in some eggs, sprinkle a handful of shredded cheese, and toss it all into a buttered skillet. The eggs cooked fast, clinging to the pasta like a soft coat, while the cheese melted into every corner. A quick stir here, a little salt there, and dinner was done before the plates were even on the table. It looked like a mess. It tasted like magic. The noodles gave the scramble some bite, and the eggs made it feel like more than just leftovers. If there was ham or hot dog slices in the fridge, they got tossed in too. It was warm, filling, and cheap. 3 things every dinner needed to be. Nobody asked for it in a restaurant, but everyone remembered it once they moved out and had to make their own meals. That is the power of recipes like this. They live in your muscle memory, even when the recipe card is long gone. Pork chops with apple. There are times where you just absolutely do not feel like getting up and doing anything, and in those times, microwaving some mac and cheese can be really helpful. We are sure most of us have memories of spending the nights at our grandparents' and waking up to some mac and cheese in the microwave, or coming home from school to a bowl that you could lose your worries in. The cheesier it was, the happier a kid would be after eating it, and even at this adult stage of life, a hot bowl can bring all those memories flooding right back in. Mac and cheese started growing in popularity when Mississippi farm families adopted it as a regular meal, and from there onwards it spread to a lot of families everywhere across the states. We thank God for that little fact every day, since we do not know what we would do without it. Grandma toast was the salty, briny pick-me-up that required almost no time and absolutely no apology. This was not a dish for the timid. In fact, opening a can of sardines was practically a declaration of independence in mid-century kitchens. You laid out your slices of toast, usually buttered and still warm, then carefully placed the sardines on top, sometimes whole, sometimes mashed slightly with a fork. A quick dab of mustard across the top gave it brightness and bite. Some people added sliced onion or a splash of lemon juice, but others left it exactly as it was, bold, oily, and rich in protein. Sardines were cheap, shelf-stable, and packed with nutrition. In the 1950s through the 1970s, this was a lunch you could count on, especially for workers and retirees who wanted something hearty but fast. It filled the belly, cleared the sinuses, and let everyone know you were not afraid of strong flavors. Whether eaten standing over the sink or seated with a folded napkin, this was the kind of 10-minute meal that made a lasting impression. Steak with onion gravy delivered the taste of a slow Sunday supper in a fraction of the time. Ultra-thin beef steaks hit a hot skillet and browned within moments, releasing a rich aroma as they seared. After the meat was set aside, sliced onions cooked in the drippings until they softened and turned sweet. Then a splash of beef broth and a dusting of flour transformed the pan juices into a smooth, savory gravy. The steaks returned to the pan for a brief simmer, soaking up the onion-infused sauce. Served with buttered toast or a mound of mashed potatoes, the dish tasted like comfort that had taken all afternoon, even though it was ready in less than 20 minutes. Families appreciated its hearty flavor and quick cleanup, while the fragrant gravy made the kitchen smell welcoming and warm. Each forkful combined tender beef and silky onions, a reminder that a satisfying meal does not require hours of preparation when technique and simple ingredients come together perfectly. Turkey Club sandwich plate turned a deli slaw with vinegar dressing was a staple in old cookbooks because it could be thrown together in minutes with only a handful of ingredients. Shredded cabbage was sprinkled with sugar, doused with vinegar, and left to soften slightly before serving. The tangy dressing contrasted with the crunch of the raw cabbage, creating a side dish that was both refreshing and filling. Many homemakers loved this recipe because it made use of a vegetable that was cheap, hearty, and often stored for long periods in root cellars. It was also endlessly adaptable, with onions, peppers, or even carrots sometimes added for extra color and flavor. Unlike mayonnaise-based slaws that came later, the vinegar version was more practical for picnics, church suppers, and potlucks since it did not spoil as quickly. Families appreciated its crisp taste on hot days, and it paired easily with meats, sandwiches, or fried foods. In kitchens where stretching ahead of cabbage could mean several meals, this recipe was a reliable friend. It was thrifty, bright, and a reminder that flavor did not have to come from expensive ingredients. The slaw was simple but never plain, and that is why it was written into so many cookbooks of the past. Quick prune whip was one of the egg scramble was the go-to dinner when breakfast never quite happened and lunch was already a blur. It started with slices of bologna, thick and pink and curled at the edges, hitting the hot pan with a sizzle. Grandma would brown them until they crisped at the edges, then crack in a few eggs and give it all a quick scramble. No measuring, no garnish, just protein and grease and flavor. Sometimes she would add a little shredded cheese if she had some, but it was not necessary. This was about getting food on the table without making it a project. The bologna gave the eggs a smoky, salty edge, and the eggs softened everything just enough to go down easy. Served in bowls, over toast, or straight from the skillet, no one ever walked away hungry. It was simple, dependable, and tasted a whole lot fancier than it had any right to. You could make it in 10 minutes, clean up in 5, and be done with the day before the sun went down. Some meals were special because they were rare. This one was special because it was always there. Creamed peas. So, pita bread pizza, it is a bit of a controversy in some places and a beloved rendition in others. Let's talk about it. While the Greeks pioneered pita 500 years ago, The pie itself came to town in America in around the 1930s when the import of Arabic pita bread started becoming really popular. This would eventually lead to shawarma stands and the like popping up all over the place too, but people did not respond as well to pita bread as they did to other wraps. Some people thought that it was just a bad way of making a pizza, while others, like home chefs and grandmas, deeply appreciated how easy it was. They saw the use in it, and if you knew what you were doing, the pita bread pizza was pretty indistinguishable from a proper pie you would get from Jerry's. Let's wrap bare bones now, but for years it was the breakfast of choice for families looking for something light, fast, and filling. You poured yourself a glass of chilled tomato juice, store-bought or homemade, and added a dash of salt to cut the acidity and wake up your taste buds. Alongside that came 2 slices of toast, buttered while hot so the corners softened and the middle stayed crisp. It was a meal that felt clean and simple, served in American homes throughout the 1950s and 1960s. Dietitians of the time even praised it for its vitamin content and digestive ease. Some folks added a boiled egg or a piece of fruit on the side, but most kept it minimal. It was what you had before heading to work, church, or the garden, something that got you going without slowing you down. If you grew up in that era, the tang of tomato juice and the warmth of buttered bread might still take you right back. Fried bologna. Sandwich with mustard brought quick satisfaction to tired working families who needed a hot dinner without fuss. Thick slices of bologna were scored so they curled as they hit a sizzling cast iron skillet, filling the kitchen with a smoky aroma that signaled something good was minutes away. While the bologna browned, slices of white bread were lightly toasted and brushed with butter for extra flavor. A generous swipe of yellow mustard added tang, and some cooks layered in thin slices of onion or a single leaf of crisp lettuce if they had it. The heat from the skillet gave the meat a crisp edge and a savory depth that transformed a humble cold cut into a hearty main course. Children loved the salty, slightly sweet taste and the way the sandwich stayed warm as they carried it to the table. Parents loved that dinner was ready before the evening news began. It was fast, filling, and cheap. Everything a working household needed at the end of a long day. Even today, one bite of that hot sandwich can summon memories of late nights, hard work, and the comfort of a meal that respected both time and appetite. Patty egg lemon soup was a Depression-era lifesaver that made its way into many family recipe cards and church cookbooks. The premise was simple. Instead of long-simmered chicken soup, you heated up a quick broth, whisked in eggs, and added a squeeze of lemon for brightness. The hot broth would cook the eggs almost instantly, creating silky strands that thickened the liquid without any flour or cream. In less than 10 minutes, you had a dish that tasted like comfort but cost next to nothing. Families appreciated the warm, tangy flavor on cold days, and since both eggs and lemons could stretch across several meals, this soup quickly became a favorite. Its Greek inspiration was often mentioned, but the thrifty American version was much lighter and faster. You could have a pot on the table in the time it took to set out the bowls, making it one of those resourceful recipes that never really went away. Grilled cheese and pineapple sandwiches were one of Grandma's best-kept secrets, the kind of meal that made you raise an eyebrow right before you fell in love with it. It started like any grilled cheese, with slices of bread and whatever cheese was available. But right before the second slice went on, she would place a canned pineapple ring right in the middle of the sandwich. Then it all went into the skillet with butter hissing underneath. The cheese melted, the pineapple softened, the bread crisped to a golden crunch. The end result? A sandwich that was both savory and sweet, crispy and juicy. It was like dinner and dessert in one bite, and it somehow worked better than anyone expected. She made it on Fridays, or on days when the pantry was almost bare, but the craving for something different was strong. The smell of warm pineapple and browned butter filled the house and lingered even after the dishes were done. Kids loved it. Grown-ups pretended they did not, until they asked for seconds. It was quick, clever, and full of unexpected joy. Just like her. This sugar toast is a delightful breakfast combo that was a go-to for grandmas, not just for their kids and grandkids, but for their own mornings as well. Sometimes all you need from the world is a good toast and a healthy hit of glucose, and cinnamon sugar does that like nothing else. Cinnamon in particular started getting a lot more popular as an ingredient during the times most of our grandmas were alive, since a lot of bakeries started using it with maple syrup and vanilla, though it was always a popular choice. It is just that little variations in daily meals did not start popping up until the 1910s or 1920s. And since then, cinnamon has become a mainstay highlight of all things that scream USA food. So our burritos were the ultimate microwave meal for kids coming home hungry in the 1980s. All it took was a flour tortilla, a scoop of canned refried beans, and a handful of shredded cheese. Roll it up, wrap it in a paper towel, and microwave for 1 to 2 minutes until everything was hot and gooey. The beans turned creamy, the cheese melted into strings, and the tortilla got just soft enough to hold it all together. Some kids added salsa or hot sauce, but the classic combo held its own. It was filling, warm, and completely foolproof. Parents loved that it was fast and cheap, and kids loved that they could make it by themselves. These burritos became a staple in lunchrooms, dorm rooms, and snack tables across the country. No stove, no oven, just a microwave and a rumbling stomach. In under 10 minutes, you were back on the couch with your plate, your burrito, and your favorite show. Tuna turned leftover staples into a 10-minute dinner that warmed both stomach and spirit. Cold cornbread from the previous night was crumbled into wide bowls, while a pot of pre-cooked pinto beans reheated on the stove with a splash of water and a pinch of chili powder. As the beans bubbled, their smoky scent filled the air, carrying memories of long simmering meals that once took hours. The hot beans were ladled over the cornbread, their broth soaking into every crumb until the bowl became a soft, savory stew. A drizzle of hot sauce or a spoonful of chopped onions added brightness, though many enjoyed it plain, letting the natural flavor of the beans and the sweet cornmeal shine. It was a dish of pure practicality, stretching yesterday's work into today's dinner without a single complaint. Quick to prepare and impossible to tire of, this simple bowl proved that good food is often nothing more than humble ingredients handled with care and eaten with gratitude. Sal pudding stovetop shortcut was one of the most beloved examples of transforming leftovers into dessert without fuss. Instead of starting with raw rice and waiting for it to cook slowly, thrifty cooks simply reheated already cooked rice in a saucepan with milk sugar and a hint of vanilla or nutmeg. The heat thickened the mixture almost instantly, and within minutes you had a pudding that was creamy, warm, and comforting. This trick was praised in countless cookbooks because it turned scraps of rice from last night's supper into a sweet dish for today. Families enjoyed it hot or cold, and it could be stretched even further by adding raisins or cinnamon when available. It was especially popular in lean times when every grain of rice had to be used wisely. The stovetop version required no baking and almost no waiting, which made it perfect for busy homemakers. What might have otherwise gone to waste became a cherished treat, showing how resourcefulness could turn something simple into something delightful. Tomato and cottage was something almost ceremonial about pan-fried potatoes and onions with an egg on top. Grandma would cube the potatoes, chop the onions, and let them sizzle in a cast-iron skillet until they were browned and crispy. The smell alone could carry through the whole house. At the very end, she would crack an egg right into the center and let it cook sunny side up, the yolk just soft enough to run a little when you cut into it. No meat, no toast, just 3 simple ingredients that together felt like more than enough. This was dinner for lean weeks, meatless Fridays, or long stretches between paychecks. The potatoes filled you up, the onions gave it flavor, and the egg brought everything together. It was hearty, honest, and completely satisfying. Served in a bowl or straight from the skillet, it made the kind of meal that slowed you down and reminded you to be grateful, even if all you had was a sack of potatoes and a few eggs left in the carton. These were meals that came from resourcefulness, not recipes, and somehow that always tasted better. Creamed peas on buttered toast was the warm, creamy comfort food you could pull together faster than it took the kettle to whistle. Just open a can of peas, pour them into a saucepan with some milk and a little butter, and stir over low heat until it thickens slightly. Some home cooks would toss in a pinch of flour or cornstarch to help it along, but plenty skipped it. The trick was all in the texture, silky and soft, not watery or clumpy. Meanwhile, slices of white bread were toasted to golden perfection, then generously buttered until they glistened. When the creamy peas were ready, they were ladled right on top. It might not win beauty contests, but this dish was affordable, filling, and beloved in many kitchens from the Great Depression to the late 1950s. A plate of this could calm a grumbling stomach without much effort, especially for working parents or tired children. Even better, it used ingredients that were nearly always on hand, and you could dress it up with bits of ham, paprika, or even shredded cheese if you were feeling fancy. But even plain, it was always something you could count on. The peanut peas on toast turned a bag of frozen peas and a little flour into a fast dinner that warmed the evening. Butter melted in a skillet while a spoonful of flour was whisked in to make a smooth roux. Then milk streamed in to form a creamy sauce. The peas went straight from freezer to pan, bright green against the pale gravy as they softened and released their sweetness. Thick slices of bread toasted in the same pan or under a quick broiler became the foundation, soaking up the sauce while staying crisp at the edges. A sprinkle of black pepper and a pinch of nutmeg gave the dish surprising depth, proof that simple pantry ingredients could still feel indulgent. Families loved how it filled plates in less than 10 minutes and cost almost nothing, making it a dependable weeknight standby. Children liked the mild flavor and the fun of cutting through the soft bread with a fork, while adults found comfort in its quiet, creamy richness. One bite carried the memory of suppers built on thrift and ingenuity, a reminder that speed and satisfaction can share the same plate when time and money are scarce, but hunger is real. Fish sticks were a quick, satisfying pairing that showed up in countless cookbooks as both a snack and a light meal. Thick slices of crisp apple were arranged neatly on a plate with wedges of sharp cheddar cheese, making a dish that was colorful, flavorful, and ready in minutes. The sweet, tart flavor of the apple balanced beautifully with the savory sharpness of the cheese, creating a combination that was both refreshing and filling. Homemakers liked this recipe because it required no cooking, which made it perfect for hot days or busy schedules. It was also considered fashionable in diet-conscious eras, since it provided protein without the heaviness of bread or meat. Families often served it for lunch, picnics, or even as part of a supper tray. The simplicity was its greatest strength, reminding people that quick meals did not need to be complicated to be satisfying. Apple and cheddar slices were both thrifty and timeless, a pairing that felt just as much at home on a farmhouse table as it did at a luncheon. Boston lettuce with French dressing or mashed potatoes felt like a backwards meatloaf, and that was exactly the point. Instead of baking everything together, Grandma browned the ground beef in a skillet, sometimes with onions, sometimes with just salt and pepper. Then she would whip up instant mashed potatoes or use leftovers from the night before. The beef went right on top, hot, greasy, and just barely seasoned, soaking into the potatoes like gravy. It was fast. It was easy. It was the kind of dinner you made when nobody could agree on anything but they all needed to eat. No ketchup glaze, no breadcrumbs, just the bare bones of a meat and potatoes meal. It was humble, but filling, messy, but comforting. And every now and then she would throw some peas on top or a handful of cheese. But even plain, it worked. It always worked. In homes where food had to stretch, this was one of the smartest tricks in the book. Wrap this list up with something that everyone has had once in their life at least. There's nothing like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich straight from the hands of your grandma. It was never the butter or the jelly. Those are just as good today as they were back in the 1900s and before everything started getting pumped with additives. Peanut butter and jelly sandwiches are some of the most iconic meals that this country has enjoyed, and probably very few foods out there have this much of a mainstream impact either. You could take the sandwich to work, or your wife makes them for you and your kids. The sandwich itself may send you down memory lane as you remember all the times your grandmother made for you. See how the act of making and eating a PB&J is a generational family experience? That was the blue-collar lunch that did not pretend to be anything fancy, and that was the point. You could find the little metal cans of potted meat stacked high in grocery stores, especially in the 1950s through the 1970s. The meat inside was soft, salty, and somewhere between pâté and spreadable mystery. made from finely ground pork or beef with seasonings and preservatives. To eat it, you simply peeled off the lid, spooned it straight onto saltines, and maybe topped it with a sliver of onion or a dab of mustard if you were feeling fancy. For factory workers, school kids, and thrifty parents, this was a quick fix that traveled well and stayed shelf-stable in lunchboxes or glove compartments. It had that strange charm of being both humble and oddly satisfying. There was no need to cook, no need to think, just meat, crackers, and a few quiet minutes to enjoy it. It was salty, filling, and unmistakably from a time when simplicity ruled the table. The crunch of the cracker against the smooth spread was all it needed to be a complete meal. Flavor and a full stomach with almost no preparation. Pre-cooked sausage slices hit the skillet first, releasing fat and spice that would season everything to come. Thin shreds of green cabbage followed, sizzling as they met the hot pan and softening into tender ribbons that soaked up the sausage drippings. A splash of vinegar or a pinch of red pepper flakes brightened the dish, while a quick toss brought everything together in less than 10 minutes. The combination of smoky meat and sweet cabbage made each bite taste richer than its humble ingredients suggested. Served alone or with a slice of bread, it filled plates and satisfied appetites without straining the grocery budget. Working families valued the ease, but they also loved the hearty, old-world flavor that reminded them of meals once cooked slowly, now captured in minutes. Sandwich spread is another reminder of how cookbooks leaned heavily on economy and speed. All it took was grinding up leftover ham, mixing it with a few spoonfuls of sweet pickle relish, and binding it all together with mayonnaise or mustard. In under 10 minutes, you had a spread that could be layered onto bread, stuffed into rolls, or served with crackers. It turned small scraps of meat into something filling, and the relish added enough tang to disguise the fact that the portion of ham was very small. This recipe became especially popular in wartime cookbooks when stretching protein was essential. Families enjoyed the bright, savory flavor and the convenience of having a ready-to-serve sandwich filler. It was perfect for school lunches or quick suppers, and many people still recall this as a nostalgic favorite from their childhood kitchen tables. Oatmeal. There is something about a fried bologna sandwich with yellow mustard that never really leaves you. Grandma would slice a thick round of bologna and toss it onto a hot skillet. As it browned, it would puff up in the center, curling into a little cup with crisp edges and sizzling sides. She would slap it onto a slice of white bread, smear on some yellow mustard, the real kind, tangy and bright, and fold it up like a letter you could eat. That was dinner. No side dish, no dessert, just a hot sandwich that hit the spot in less than 5 minutes. The smell of frying bologna was unmistakable. Part school lunch, part diner counter, part home. It was cheap, fast, and unforgettable. You might not see it on a dinner menu, but it fed generations of kids and kept more than a few households running when money ran thin. And if you ever had one fresh off the skillet, you probably still remember the first bite. Egg salad, butter, and lettuce sandwich is one of those Depression-era holdovers that makes people raise their eyebrows until they try it. At first glance, it seems almost like a dare. Why would anyone put crisp lettuce between slices of bread slathered with peanut butter? But during the 1930s and 1940s, it was an easy, no-cook meal that hit the sweet spot between nutrition and convenience. Peanut butter brought protein and staying power, while iceberg lettuce added crunch and a faint, watery freshness that balanced the stickiness. It was one of those clever tricks where texture did all the heavy lifting. Some families made it fancier with a drizzle of honey, others added thin apple slices or a dash of salt. But the basic version, just peanut butter, lettuce, and soft sandwich bread, was quick, cheap, and surprisingly refreshing. It traveled well in lunchboxes and showed up on supper tables when time or money was tight. These days, it has mostly disappeared from menus, but if you grew up with it, you might remember how odd it looked and how oddly good it actually was. Single pan into a complete dinner that filled plates and quieted hungry stomachs. Elbow macaroni boiled in salted water while ground beef browned in a deep skillet with chopped onions and a dusting of garlic powder. The drained pasta was folded into the sizzling meat along with a handful of shredded cheddar and a splash of milk, creating a creamy sauce as everything mingled over low heat. The smell of melting cheese and seared beef brought everyone to the kitchen before the cook could even call them. In less than 20 minutes, the dish was ready, bubbling and rich, served straight from the pan to eager bowls. Families loved how it combined the familiar taste of a cheeseburger with the comfort of macaroni and cheese, turning two favorites into one speedy supper. Leftovers reheated beautifully, though they rarely lasted long. Affordable, filling, and fun to eat, this skillet meal proved that a fast dinner could still taste like a weekend indulgence, feeding both nostalgia and appetite in every creamy, beefy bite. Vegetable fries were a breakfast table staple in the 40s and 50s, and they could not be simpler. Housewives would cut grapefruits in half, loosen the sections with a knife, sprinkle the tops with brown sugar, and place them under the broiler just long enough for the sugar to bubble. In less than 10 minutes, you had a dish that looked elegant, yet cost very little. The bitterness of the grapefruit paired with the sweetness of the caramelized sugar made for a refreshing start to the day. Many cookbooks praised this dish as a healthy option during a time when vitamins were heavily emphasized in advertising and diet culture. It also became popular as a light dessert for luncheons, adding a touch of sophistication without requiring any complicated preparation. With its bright color and quick assembly, this recipe was one of the easiest ways to impress with almost no effort. Quick escalloped tomato bacon, juicy tomatoes, and crunchy lettuce layered between slices of toasted bread might seem ordinary, yet they form a timeless favorite that transcends culinary fads. Often referred to as the old-fashioned BLT, this sandwich exemplifies the essence of speed and convenience, delivering a hearty meal with minimal preparation time. Culinary historians trace its lineage to early 20th century American diners, where bacon, lettuce, and tomato combined to create a balanced combination of savory, fresh, and tangy flavors. Some enthusiasts humorously claim that BLT stands for Better Lunch Triumph, reflecting its universal appeal and simple construction. Though easy to assemble, this sandwich boasts complex layers of taste and texture. The smoky crispness of bacon, paired with refreshing lettuce and the natural sweetness of a vine-ripened tomato, culminates in a harmonious bite that satisfies almost any midday craving. Nostalgia emerges each time it appears on a plate, as countless childhood memories revolve around that first crunchy mouthful. Its accessibility means that even cooks with limited time or confidence can excel at preparing this familiar treat. Mashed banana and mayo comfort with almost no effort, turning a handful of pantry staples into a bowl of creamy warmth. Elbow macaroni boiled quickly in salted water while butter melted in a waiting pot. The drained pasta was tossed directly into the melted butter, and a heavy shower of freshly ground black pepper coated each piece, releasing a fragrant spice that filled the room. A small scoop of grated Parmesan, if available, added a gentle richness, but even without it, the dish delivered deep satisfaction. Ready in less than 15 minutes, it soothed the end of a long day with its silky texture and simple flavor. Children loved the mild, buttery taste, while adults appreciated the subtle heat of the pepper and the reminder that good food does not always demand a complex recipe. This humble meal has endured for generations because it proves that speed, thrift, and pleasure can happily share the same pot when hunger calls for something immediate and comforting. Grilled cheese with tomato soup remained the dependable duo as the fast-fix lunch that made diced ham, mayo, and a little pickle relish stretch way further than you would think. You chopped leftover ham, mixed it with mayonnaise and relish, and spooned it onto a stack of crackers. That was lunch, done in minutes and surprisingly filling. Old cookbooks loved this recipe for being cheap, easy, and portable, which is why it kept popping up in school lunch guides and picnic sections. You could dress it up with celery or onions, but most families kept it simple with just ham, mayo, and a little crunch. It might not look like much, but it worked when you needed protein, salt, and something satisfying without standing over a stove. The saltines soaked up just enough moisture. The ham salad added creaminess, and together it passed for lunch, even when the fridge was running low. American goulash light was less of a recipe and more of a formula. Meat, pasta, and tomatoes in whatever shape you could get. Elbow macaroni was the go-to because it cooked fast and filled up the pot. Grandma would brown a little ground beef, drain off the grease, and toss it with stewed tomatoes straight from the can. No sauce, no simmering, no drama. Sometimes she added a bit of onion or garlic salt, but usually it was just whatever she had on hand. The pasta would soak up the tomato juice until it was soft and tangy, and the beef added just enough flavor to make it stick to your ribs. Served in bowls with a sprinkle of grated cheese. If you were lucky, it was dinner. Fast. It was not the baked casserole version you see in magazines. This was goulash stripped down to its bones, made for people who needed food on the table in 10 minutes or less. And the best part? It was good. Really good. No breadcrumbs, no baking dish, no long prep. Just one skillet, one spoon, and a whole lot of knowing what mattered. That is how Grandma cooked. Spam and cottage cheese and pineapple salad was a cold dish that made its way onto countless dinner plates in the 1950s, 1960s, and 1970s without ever needing an oven or a skillet. It was a mix of convenience and charm, using just a scoop of creamy cottage cheese, a few chunks of canned pineapple, and a single crisp lettuce leaf as a bed. Some versions even topped the whole thing with a glossy red maraschino cherry for visual flair, making it feel like a mini dessert that snuck onto the dinner table. It was served as a salad, a side, or sometimes even a light dessert, perfect for hot evenings or last-minute guests. Housewives appreciated it because it required no cooking and could be assembled in under 10 minutes with ingredients straight from the pantry and fridge. It had the creamy, sweet, tangy flavor balance that defined so many mid-century American dishes. Maybe it sounds strange today, but back then, it was standard on picnic spreads, potluck tables, and family dinners. If you saw that cherry on top, you knew exactly what was underneath. Cheese biscuit sandwiches turned leftovers into a satisfying handheld meal that tasted like a weekend treat even on the busiest night. Flaky biscuits baked from a can or quickly mixed from scratch rose high in the oven while slices of baked ham warmed in a skillet. As soon as the biscuits were golden, they were split open and layered with the savory ham and slices of sharp cheddar or mild American cheese. A few minutes back in the warm oven melted the cheese into a gooey blanket that glued everything together. The salty ham, buttery biscuit, and rich cheese made a perfect combination that required no side dish and no long wait. For families coming home late, this sandwich was both supper and comfort, a way to turn yesterday's roast into tonight's fast feast. Children grabbed them hot from the tray, and the memory of that warm bite remains an echo of efficiency and home-style pleasure. Skillet cakes from Instant Mash proved that even convenience products could be reimagined into something homey and satisfying. Old cookbooks often suggested taking leftover mashed potatoes, or even instant ones prepared quickly, mixing them with an egg and a little flour, then frying them in a skillet until golden. In less than 10 minutes, you had crispy, comforting patties that worked for breakfast, lunch, or dinner. The beauty of this hack was how it turned something as simple as potato flakes into a versatile dish with real character. Families enjoyed topping them with sour cream, applesauce, or gravy, depending on what was available. For homemakers trying to save time while still offering variety, this recipe felt like a small victory. It proved that even shortcuts could deliver a dish that tasted just as good as traditional versions. Cucumber and sour cream. Before we had Taco Tuesday, there were taco-style ground beef wraps, and they showed up whenever ground beef was on sale. Grandma would brown the beef in a skillet, toss in some chili powder, garlic salt, and maybe a spoonful of ketchup or tomato paste, then serve it up inside whatever bread she had around. Sometimes it was a tortilla, sometimes it was plain white sandwich bread folded in half. The seasoning was not store-bought. It was just whatever smelled right. Shredded lettuce, diced onions, or a sprinkle of cheese got added when there was time or leftovers from Sunday. These wraps were messy, fast, and full of flavor. The meat was soft and spicy. The bread was warm and soaked up all the juices. Kids would fold theirs tight and eat it in 2 bites. Adults would eat standing up by the sink, trying not to drop any. This was Tex-Mex before anyone called it that. Comfort food with no instructions and no fuss. Grandma just called it dinner. And somehow, it always hit the spot. Cheesy macaroni and canned pea toasts were how you made pantry food look halfway fancy when the clock and your energy ran out. You took canned salmon, mashed it with mayonnaise, stirred in some peas, and spread it thick over hot toast. That was dinner. It sounds simple now, but when fresh meat was scarce or paychecks were tight, this was the kind of meal that kept families going. The old cookbooks were filled with little tricks like this, ways to stretch canned goods into something that almost felt special. Salmon from a can never fooled anyone, but the crunch of toast and the soft peas made it oddly satisfying. You might even see a sprinkle of pepper or a squeeze of lemon if someone was feeling bold. It came together fast, filled you up, and for those 10 minutes in the kitchen, it made you feel like you still had control over dinner. Sometimes that is all anyone needed. Garlic-scented, spicy, and elegantly minimal, this Italian treasure draws hungry fans with its impressive simplicity. 10-minute pasti kick to the end of a long day, drawing on traditions that went back generations. Thin slices of country ham hit a hot skillet and sizzled until their edges crisped and their smoky scent filled the kitchen. Once the meat was removed, strong black coffee was poured into the pan to deglaze the savory bits, blending with a splash of water and a touch of butter to create the dark, rich gravy that gave the dish its name. The result was a sauce both bitter and savory, perfect for spooning over the ham or soaking into warm biscuits. In less than 15 minutes, the table held a meal that tasted slow, cooked, and soulful. Working families appreciated the speed while still honoring a Southern classic, and the sharp aroma of coffee and ham became a sign that dinner was ready. Each bite balanced salt, smoke, and a subtle bitterness, a reminder of farmhouse suppers where nothing was wasted and flavor came from skill and tradition rather than expensive ingredients. Cheeseburger. Mac Skillet turned to applesauce toast with nutmeg was the frugal breakfast tucked inside every homemaker column and Depression-era guide when groceries ran low but mornings kept coming. You would toast a slice of bread, smear it with applesauce, sprinkle a little nutmeg on top, and breakfast was done in under 10 minutes. It was practical, filling, and sweet enough to feel comforting when everything else felt stretched thin. Families leaned on meals like this when fruit was scarce, budgets were tight, and creativity had to carry the kitchen. Applesauce lasted longer than fresh fruit, nutmeg added warmth, and toast turned it all into a quick meal that actually filled you up. It was not fancy, but it worked, and you could find it everywhere from farm kitchens to city apartments. Some folks added butter, others kept it plain, but either way, it was one of those quiet little breakfasts that made hard mornings feel a little easier. These days, applesauce toast barely gets a mention, but back then it quietly carried families through. Quick Mac cornbread and buttermilk in a bowl might not sound like much, but it was a whole supper to folks who knew how to stretch $1. Grandma would crumble leftover cornbread into a dish, pour cold buttermilk right on top, and hand it over with a spoon. That was it. No cooking, no warming up. Just cold, tangy, crumbly simplicity. It was a Southern staple that made its way into kitchens all across America, especially during hot months or tight times. Some people added salt. Others stirred in a little honey. But most just ate it as it was. A strange but surprisingly filling meal that stuck with you. The cornbread soaked up the buttermilk, softening into something almost like a pudding. It was not meant to impress, just to nourish, and for a lot of families, it was all they needed at the end of a long day. It was cheap, it was easy, and most importantly, it got the job done. That is the kind of dinner that deserved a place in every old cookbook. Sardine. The American cheese and tomato open-faced melt was as simple as it was satisfying. You grabbed a slice of white sandwich bread, laid down a slice of tomato, sometimes salted, sometimes not, and placed a square of processed American cheese over it. Then it went under the broiler for a couple of minutes until the cheese started to bubble and melt into the tomato. The corners of the bread crisped up while the middle stayed soft. What came out was gooey, warm, and somehow always more delicious than the sum of its parts. It was popular in the 1950s and 1960s, when quick lunches had to be hot but easy, and families did not want to waste electricity on the stove. You could whip up a tray of these in no time, and people would fight over the browned, blistered cheese on top. Some folks added oregano or a splash of hot sauce, but most kept it plain. It was the kind of dish that taught kids how to use the oven and how to make something delicious out of almost nothing. Satisfied every craving after a long workday. Hot dogs sizzled in a skillet while a can of chili warmed on the stove with a spoonful of cumin and smoked paprika to deepen the flavor. Soft buns were split and toasted lightly, ready to hold the hot dogs as soon as they browned. The steaming chili was spooned generously over each dog, followed by shredded cheddar and a scatter of diced onions for bite. The smell of spice and smoke filled the kitchen, drawing everyone to the table before the last dog was dressed. Each plate was a cheerful mess, requiring extra napkins and rewarding every bite with a mix of textures and flavors. It was inexpensive, quick and filling, perfect for nights when there was little time but big appetites. The combination of tender bun, juicy sausage, and rich chili sauce made this simple dish a lasting favorite in households that valued both speed and flavor. Shrimp and grits. Grape nuts custard was one of those recipes that transformed an everyday cereal into something that felt like a homemade dessert. The method was simple. Heat milk on the stove, stir in sugar, vanilla, and a handful of grape nuts, and let the mixture thicken as the cereal softened. The result was a warm, lightly textured custard that was ready in minutes and cost next to nothing. Many old cookbooks recommended it as an economical way to serve dessert for a family without needing eggs or cream in large amounts. The cereal gave body and nutty flavor, while the sugar and vanilla made it taste more indulgent than it truly was. Families enjoyed it both hot and chilled, and it became especially popular during the Depression when stretching every ingredient mattered. The dish proved that convenience foods like cereal could be adapted creatively into something entirely new. It was quick, practical, and comforting, making it a staple of many kitchens for years. Pea fritter. Which quick recipe from the past deserves a comeback in your kitchen? Drop it in the comments, hit like, and subscribe for more forgotten flavors from African American culinary history.